It's time again to register for the Photo Imaging Connect conference at the Rio Hotel, March 1st and 2nd, 2026. Go to www.photoimagingconnect.com for more information on the program and take advantage of the early bird pricing.
Welcome to the Dead Pixel Society podcast, the photo imaging industry's leading news source. Here's your host, Gary Peugeot. The Dead Pixel Society podcast is brought to you by Media Clip, Advertech Printing, and Independent Photo Imagers.
Hello again and welcome to the Dead Pixel Society podcast. I'm your host, Gary Peugeot, and today we're joined by Ted Bullard and Josh Lewis of Richmond Professional Lab in Richmond, Virginia. Ted's the president of the company and Josh is the COO, and they're going to talk about how Richmond is focusing on the professional market and particularly volume photography. Hi guys, how are you today?
Very well. How are you?
Great. Thanks for having us.
So for the 12 people who don't know who Richmond Professional Lab is, can you kind of go into the company history a little bit?
Well, my dad started the company in 1938. He was a photographer himself. He had paid his way through college and graduate school as a photographer. When he came back to Richmond, and he and my grandfather got together to start Richmond Camera.
Was it a full-blown lab at the time, or was it a hybrid studio who did their own processing? At what point did they start bringing in outside work?
Well, before World War II, my dad had started the company in 1938. World War II happened. He went to Norfolk, Virginia, and ran the reconnaissance plant for the Navy. Mm-hmm. And then after the war, when he came back, Albert Smith had started a lab during the war in the basement of a shoe shop in town. And so my dad and Albert got together and started the Pro Lab part, which it went through many iterations to get where it is today, obviously. But that's the lab started there at 217 East Grace and later moved to 213 West Broad, where we stayed for 55 years.
Was it always on the portrait side of the business? And I always love these old stories about people who started labs in basements, just because that's where the water was.
Right, exactly. Yeah, he was a portrait photographer himself. But when he got into the lab with Albert Smith, they did all kinds of processing. Most of it was black and white, of course, at that time. It was any kind of imagery that was available, professional and non-professional.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that because were they doing any amateur work at the time too? Were they like an amateur wholesale lab too?
They did, very much so.
Yeah, that was very common in those eras. Just take whatever you could get because there wasn't that much of it back then in the 30s and 40s.
Oh, exactly. It wasn't a whole lot. And a lot of it was being sent back to Kodak because Kodak sold the cameras, put the film in it, and you would send the whole camera back to Kodak. They would reload with film, send it, process pictures back to you. So it was an awkward kind of service to really get into. But in 1956, Kodak the federal government passed the consent decree in 1956, which said that Kodak could no longer include the processing and the purchase of the film.
Right.
So at that point, it really opened the door up to not only black and white processing, but color as well.
You know, a lot of people who don't have history in the industry don't remember the whole consent decree thing where Kodak kind of locked up. And then they also had to create the industry in the sense where they had to go out and teach anyone who wanted to be a lab, they had to go teach them how to do it.
It sure did. Even when I came in 1972, I went to Kodak to train, to learn how to do everything. Spent a year in Rochester to do that.
Ted, what's your background in terms of coming into the business? Was this something you always wanted to do, or did you go do something else before you got into the business?
No, I was in the horse industry. We had raised horses all my life, and I very much had planned to pursue a career there. But in 1972, I had a really near fatal accident on a tractor at the farm. And after I recovered from that, I told my dad I didn't want to go back to school. I wanted to go to work. I had graduated from high school and started college. So anyway, I went to night school and for college and then continued to work with my dad. At that time, we had another business called Richmond Saddlery where we imported and resold horse equipment as well.
Wow.
And so I really went into that part of the business because that's what I knew. My brother was already in the photographic business. My brother decided that he wanted to get out. And I asked my dad if I could get into that, and I didn't know anything. So he sent me to Rochester. I had a lot of yellow blood at that time. And Kodak convinced me very much to forgive that yellow glove.
At what point did Richmond Professional transfer more to the professional side? Do you know? I mean, you were doing some amateur work probably through the 50s and 60s, but when was the point where you decided, listen, we're going to be a professional lab?
In the 70s, when I came back from Rochester, probably by 1976 or so, I really wanted very much so to move into the professional market. I talked to two of the local photographers to see if they would send me work if I went to do that for them, and they said, yeah, they'd love to, because most of them sent their work down to Mizell, Atlanta at that time. And so they were glad to have someone local to work with. And the word got out pretty quick, and we got very, very busy very quickly.
And that was about the time you moved, right? I mean, didn't you move locations around that time?
No, we were in the building at Broad Street and remained there up until it was only 3 years ago that we moved here.
So was it a case of taking over that building over time? Is that kind of what happened? Like starting in the basement, then growing out and taking it over time?
Oh, absolutely. It was a 4-story building, 4.5 stories. And we took over the entire building. I bought the buildings next door, 2 addresses next door. And then I bought another building around the corner. And so, yeah, we occupied a lot of space in the middle of downtown Richmond, which was good in a lot of ways, but had its very big logistic difficulties of getting material in and out of the building. So, it had been my quest for a long time to move, but it always seemed like every time I got my act together, ready to move, something came along. Economic problems in 2008, and then many digital revolution, obviously, was quite something to deal with, and all these things just kept happening to put it off.
Sure.
And so finally, I got old enough. I figured I better hurry up and do it.
So, question I have regarding like that whole transition, right? Everyone kind of knew, I've been in the industry a while, since the late 80s, 90s. I lived through that transition itself, on the outside looking in. Everyone kind of knew digital was coming, but no one ever knew exactly when it was going to happen, when digital printing was going to be able to compete with silver halide and all those things. What were some of the things you were looking for in trying to anticipate those trends?
Well, in 99, we put in our first digital printing equipment. And I had realized, fortunately, early in the game that digital photography was going to be a big thing. It was definitely going to take over. And, Kodak actually invented the digital camera. And anyway, I kind of realized, just whatever reason, that was going to be the big deal.
Right.
So in 99, we started getting into it. We got into it very much so. We were one of the first people to abandon film altogether and go strictly digital. And then I guess it's probably around 2002 that we put in the first Naritsu R2R, which was kind of the main printer for our volume side of the business. Sure. And the volume photographers were some of the first ones to embrace the digital technology, because obviously with them shooting 70 millimeter film and all the problems that surrounded the logistics of producing product for their customers, it was logical to do that as soon as they could.
Was volume always a piece of the business in the sense there? Because it sounds to me like you started more as a traditional portrait lab, but now you've got a huge visibility in the volume space. When did that start happening?
Oh, it happened probably in the 80s, I would say. After we started doing the professional work back in the 70s, then we started to find the professional photographers who were shooting long roll 70 millimeter. And of course, we get spliced 220s because we ran cine processors, which was a little bit unusual, but it was really targeted for that kind of volume market as well as the high-end professional work. So to be able to process the long roll film and everything really gave us a foothold in that part of the business. Unfortunately, I wasn't really good at figuring out like national marketing or getting much outside of our arena. So pretty much, Washington, D.C., and the state of Virginia were our turf.
Yeah. But that's still, that's a big market.
Oh, it was. And we enjoyed great success there. We really did. When the digital revolution came along, that made that market much too small. And that was when we had to go to national.
Absolutely. On the printing side, so you said you put in the Noritsus as digital printers. What was kind of your choice on that one? Because that's not really, I'm not sure I would call that quote unquote professional equipment at the time, right? I mean, there were a lot of higher end printers platforms coming out.
Yeah, the Noritsu R2Rs were unique in that one, they were at the highest resolution output that you could get at the time, and they had the capability and speed to handle roll material. So, to be able to print in that fashion was much more automated, and it gave us the opportunity to really produce the highest end photographs that you could digitally.
So, Josh, what's your entree into the company? How did you get involved with the company as and weren't always the COO, I imagine.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Let me say this first. You're not bad at marketing and you're not behind. You just need a better approach. I'm Lauren Tilden, host of Making Good, the podcast that helps small business owners stop overcomplicating marketing and start doing what actually moves the needle in their businesses. Making Good has short, practical episodes on showing up consistently, building relationships, and turning attention into sales, all without burning out or chasing shiny objects. If you want marketing to feel simpler, kinder, more sustainable, and most importantly, more effective, search Making Good in your favorite podcast app.
No. I started out as a temporary packager, like a lot of our employees do. So I started in 2009. So I was fresh out of college, looking to see what I was going to do. I had, a background in both photography and business. I, like many of our employees, started out in art school and then was smart enough to switch over to business school halfway through. So in 2009, I was just looking for a job straight out of college and just started in the packaging department, and very, very quickly enjoyed the work that we were doing. For me personally, it's just a great intersection between being on the artistic side, being able to see photographs, being able to, love that work. But then really when you get into it, it's very process heavy. And that's, something I love too, is just, looking at efficiency. Done a number of positions over the years. I did some R&D specific stuff for us for a while. I was, running our full service department for a while. And I think the COO role, probably about 6 years ago is when I kind of took over operations of the lab.
Were you always, as an art student, were you always into photography, or was there, there's a lot more to art than photography. So what was your area of interest in the art world?
Yeah, it was definitely photography.
Okay.
I took an elective photo class and kind of fell in love with it. And so, ended up getting an associate's degree in photography, and really, really loved it. So yeah, there was definitely a period of time where I was, going to do that for a living. I photographed weddings for a few years, started kind of a portrait business for a few years, and was doing all that on the side as the lab was starting to grow. And so at some point, our trajectory took off enough that it made sense to kind of focus on the lab side rather than the photo side for me.
There's a lot that happens in, weddings where a lot of people get into the business, but it's a hard business to stay in, right? There's a lot of time commitment, a lot of weekends, a lot of family stuff you miss because you're doing the wedding gig.
Oh yeah, and dealing with employees can be stressful sometimes, but dealing with brides is a whole different ball game. So.
Yeah, we probably don't want to address that piece of it. So I'm kind of interested in the R&D piece that you were talking about, because you guys have a reputation of being kind of on the forefront of a lot of things. What are the things you're looking for when you're evaluating technology? Is it the market? Is it the technology? Is it price point you can deliver something at? What are some of the things you're looking for when you're evaluating a new technology when it comes to output?
You want to take that one?
Yeah, I can address part of it, because that was part of the impetus behind the move. Is I had planned to move whenever the technology changed. And when digital photography was happening and we were really getting rolling back about 2002, I thought that the printing industry would very quickly embrace the digital revolution, and we would have, high quality, high speed digital printing equipment for photographs a couple of years. Kodak and Konica and Fuji, the big players in the industry at that time, they were projecting that 2008 was going to be the year when more than 50% of the photographs are going to be taken digital. I think they made that comment at PMA in January of 2002.
Right.
And little did they know that that was the year that more than half were going to take digital.
Right. Yeah.
So it was quite a big miss on our industry side to not address that. And of course, the software companies had a lot of catch up to do because the digital plunge had happened and they really weren't ready for it. And the manufacturers of the equipment were so far removed from it that those Noitsu R2Rs that I was talking about, which we expected to use for maybe 5 years max, we actually ended up running them until we moved. So that was very difficult to say the least. But the problem was there wasn't high enough printing technology, or the capability of the printers wasn't high enough to produce the high quality images at the volume that we needed to be able to produce our work.
Yeah.
So by working with Canon and working with Hewlett Packard, we were able to take both of those pieces of equipment and refine them enough to be able to produce what we wanted to do. Because even the Canon DreamLabs that we ended up going with, we worked with Canon. I think we went the first time was 10 years.
Yeah.
Like around 2010 or 12.
Yeah.
To help them figure out that this wasn't really good enough.
Right.
So they finally got it good enough, and they figured a lot of the problems out, both mechanically and photographically, to be able to produce that product. And then we worked with HP to figure out the added inks and technology that it would take to produce photographic product, and then to get the finishes, the coatings and the laminates that we would need to be able to produce a photo quality product. So I was highly concerned about the quality of the image and the longevity of the image. And both of those companies coming out of the printing side, they didn't really understand the requirement for the longevity of the prints, as well as the resolution and the tonal range that we needed to be able to produce. So we actually operate now, as I think everyone does, but it's a much larger color space than we could ever achieve photographically. So if someone is to say that, hey, I really wish I could shoot film because I can do something that I can't do digitally, that's only because they don't know the capabilities of digital imagery. Because we, in fact, can manipulate an image or do whatever we want to do to produce something higher quality than we ever could photographically. So it was just a quest and a difficulty to get there. So really, with that equipment becoming available, we chose the time to buy the building, make the move, and build this building out for that. So when we came here, we were completely dry. We have never brought any photographic stuff into the building and didn't produce anything in the traditional silver halide fashion.
And Josh, you were gonna no. That was great. No, I love the history lesson, because I think that's one of the things people today's world don't really understand what the transition was. Because when HP started exhibiting at PMA and things like that, people started showing digital printers at PMA. It would be like, yeah, but it's just not photographic. I mean, it's ink on paper and it looks okay and it is a picture, but it's not what you can sell as a professional photograph, right? There's coatings, there's paperweight, there's all kinds of things, that color gamut that needs to be there. So Josh, what's your insight into that?
Oh, I've always been very efficiency heavy. It's like, the quality has to be a given. It's like, yeah, the quality has to be there. It has to be, look like a true professional photograph. But at the same time, I've been very efficiency driven since the get-go, because we knew we wanted to grow, we knew we wanted to do all these things. And so I was never really one that wanted to go the direction of like a fleet of mini labs, because there was many years where you could get a silver photograph off of lots of pieces of equipment, but to get the speed and the efficiency that you needed, you would have to have a warehouse full of them and people running them all. I always tell people when I give tours now that these Canon DreamLab printers, that was the first time that I ever, put a print off of a printer next to the silver halide ones and couldn't pick out the differences myself between them. And that was kind of the turning point for me, because we had been looking for years for something that would be true and that could have the speed. And that was kind of the first thing that those two things overlapped. I was all in once that happened.
So you would rather, from a production standpoint, you think there's more efficiency in fewer bigger pieces of iron as opposed to, like you said, a fleet of smaller printers?
Yeah, and mostly because of the speed and the efficiency you gain. That's what we've kind of differentiate ourselves some too, is we do print runs. So we've written a lot of internal software and we've written a lot of our own code to take take all the orders that are coming in, tens of thousands of orders a day, and categorize them when they come in based on their contents and their size and what items are in them, and
Sure.
be able to produce, like orders together and all that. So rather than having equipment that could disperse a lot of I feel like overall the efficiency is higher, going that direction, having high speed equipment and ganging it up as much as we can.
Yeah, one thing I would add to that is that even back when in the film, to me, the best way to process a roll of film was a cine processor. First in the chemistry, last out of the chemistry. It was all about the timing and the controls that you could have with that kind of equipment. So it really was an issue that if you wanted to process a perfect roll of film, you had to have a cine processor. Cine processors at that time were only made for the film industry. So the volume capacity of those film processors was huge. So the demand for volume really came for the quest to be able to process one roll perfectly. So that kind of applies here as well. As the best printing technology is very expensive. So to be able to afford that level of technology, you've got to be able to produce a lot of product. So the size of the equipment is largely driven behind the individual image quality of a single print. So that if we're going to produce the absolute best print, we need the best equipment to do that. And the best equipment is big because it was so expensive to refine that technology to that point.
Right.
So it's kind of a funny way of getting there, but the volume isn't just driven by more. It's driven by, we really want to give the customer the absolute best product he can get. And that's a way to get it. So then the pressure's on Josh to be efficient enough to be able to make that affordable and profitable.
Right.
Because we are very sensitive to the profitability of the photographers. So we can't charge the photographer what he should pay for multi-million-dollar pieces of equipment. So we're going to have to produce a lot of it very efficiently to be able to keep his price structure where he can be profitable. Because we want our photographers to be profitable, so they'll do more of it.
So let's talk a little bit about the volume market specifically. It's really changed massively over the last decade. I mean, if you would have told me, in the year 2025, the volume photography space would be one of the most interesting parts of the professional photography industry, I think I would have probably, rolled my eyes. But it's really changed so much over the last 10 years. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because you've really had, the evolution of kind of the independent volume photographer kind of rise up as, more and more opportunity has come into the marketplace because you've had the lapse of the major player, I guess is the way to say that. So you've got a lot of innovators, you've got a lot of people who are, starting up volume photography businesses. I think 20% of the SPAC audience is new every year, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. When you're talking to some of these kind of innovators or these new players, what are you talking to them about why Richmond may be a good partner for them?
Well, it really is part the support. Our level of technical expertise is very high. We're very lucky to have Josh and several other of his counterparts that are, I would proudly say, are probably some of the more sophisticated and educated people in the industry. So we have a lot of intelligence and technology to share with those people or anybody that's interested to try to know how to do what they may need to do to be successful from our side anyway, at least from the lab side.
And then, I think any lab you talk to now, the quality is kind of like, that's step one. It's like everyone has to have the quality because,
it's all great.
That's kind of the starting. Yeah. And so from there, the expertise I think goes a long way. I'm a numbers guy. I'm very big into data analysis and that kind of stuff. So we're, continuing to look and see what else we can do for customers from that end, actually analyzing the trends of what they're sending us, giving them suggestions, how they can improve their profit margins, which, showing them what their average sheet counts are of their orders, all that kind of stuff. And so we really try to, we're in a lot of ways, we're the software company partners we have are great. And the lab is a kind of a separate entity from that. And so we kind of see how much we can help all the players together as far as looking at that data and figuring out how it can kind of be a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, I think the other piece of that I wanted to say was that realizing that the photographers, when the high-end digital SLR cameras came out, they really felt like they were going to get maybe more competition from the consumer market than they actually ended up getting in the end.
Right.
So at that time, a lot of the photographers were really struggling, and a lot of people did try to shoot weddings and try to shoot a lot of their own portraits and stuff to not have to pay the fees to photographers. So we really focused on the side of what was going to keep the photographers going. And even if their passion was to shoot, wildlife or portraits or some other segment, they could use this piece, the volume part of the industry, to make money, to use for their profit, to make a living,
right,
and then perhaps pursue their passion on the side.
Sure.
But at the same time, it did give them a venue to actually have a sustainable income.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the turnaround times also. That's something that's one of my proudest things. I'm so focused on the efficiency side of things, and we've in the new building, once we kind of got settled after the move and everything, we're kind of firing on all cylinders now, and we've had them. We've even started this year putting on our website very much on the homepage, just like what the average days in house for each type of order is that you can see live every week on there. And I'm very, very proud that we've gotten to a point where we're not scared to do that. And even October, busiest school photography time of the year, we were averaging around 2 days in and out of the house of all these orders.
Yeah, I think that's one of the customer expectations now, right? I mean, I remember, back in the film days, right? You'd take weeks or months to get people's orders back. And now everyone knows it's digital, but still you got to maintain the quality too. I mean, you can deliver in a couple of days, but you got to maintain the quality that you're talking about.
Yep, absolutely. I was going to say, now we're to the point where the postal carriers is kind of the biggest thing. It takes longer for stuff to get people in the mail than it does for us to actually process it, which is, something that, we can only control but so much, but it's kind of the flip of how it used to be. We can get it in and out of the lab in 2 days, and we still have to make sure it gets where it's going. So we focus a lot on the shipping carriers as well, because that's a big part of the industry at this point.
Sure. Looking forward to 2026 and kind of the expectations for the industry then, I was talking to one of the vendors of one of the software vendors. He says, they're just not building any more schools. So it's kind of a flat market, which is, I guess, one way to looking at it. But so where do you see some of the growth opportunities for the industry going into 2026?
I think a lot of those opportunities come from the sports and school related activities. I mean, I think youth are going to remain the sort of centerpiece of any, I think, volume photography. There's not a lot of opportunity for, and I don't think people really want photographs of older people. Anyway, I think the youth market will remain the impetus behind it, but I think we can expand that market even further than we have already. There's a lot of opportunity there. But I think now with the integration of all the graphics and things like that, we do produce a more diverse set of products than we ever have. I think photographers, through diversity of product and diversity of venue, the dance programs offer huge opportunities. And any activity that child's involved in, the family's going to want photographs of those things. And everyone will enjoy sort of the history of that person growing up. So I think that's going to still be the big part of it.
I love the product side of the business as well. That's when I was doing R&D, I was focused a lot on that, of just like, what are cool new things that you can do with a school or a little league sports picture that, people would like to have. And what's a way we can use our efficiency as a lab to get those products in people's hands, in a way maybe they couldn't before. And that's a lot of what we've been talking about this year. We purchased some more equipment just recently for, like yard signs and the big head cutouts and that kind of thing. And that was that's kind of an example of a product where we've been discussing it with our customers for quite a while, but if we were going to sell it, we wanted to be able to do it in a way that worked best for them. And so most of them were used to, you can go to other places that just do that type of business. But they're not in the school volume. They're not in the volume photography space. So they're, you're going to order them, you're going to get them in a big box. You have to figure out how to get them to the parents. And so, we said, okay, if we're going to go in this equipment, we want parents to be able to order those products right along with their 8x10s and with their other products and get it delivered, to their home, so that it's, a win-win for everyone. So I think that's kind of an area too, just looking to see how we can get more cool products in the mix that parents can get delivered straight to them without it, having to be a hassle.
Yeah, because that's been one of the big changes too in the industry is, direct shipping to parents, right? Because I remember when orders used to go to the school and now the photographers actually can send stuff to people's homes. That's opened up a huge opportunity.
Yeah. And obviously, COVID had, some portion of an impact on that. We definitely, in the lab, using us as an example, we definitely expanded and created an entire department just for the ship to home stuff. When COVID was happening, that was kind of the impetus for that. And we were really kind of waiting to see as we started coming out of the peak of COVID, like if that was going to go back the other direction. But I think also if you're a school district and, you got on that model and you didn't have to handle any of the photos, it's like, why would you want to go back?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, it's opened up huge opportunities. So where can people go for more information about Richmond Professional Lab and to learn more about your company and what you guys do?
Yeah, absolutely. Our website is richmondprolab.com. So that has all of our products and information on it. You can get in contact with our customer service team there. And we'll also be at SPAC coming up in Vegas. We'll be there the whole week, myself, and we're actually bringing a pretty big team. There's going to be 11 of us out there. So pretty much anything you want to talk about, you can find us at SPAC this year, and would love to talk about it.
Awesome. Well, great, guys. Listen, it's great talking to you. Great learning more about the history of the company. And like I said, I love talking to people like the second generation company, people who took over their dads from doing the processing in the basement and all that, then going fully digital. It's quite the evolution. Congratulations on that.
Well, thank you very much. And Blake's not here with us today, but my youngest son is very actively involved in the company. My middle son is involved as well, just not as much on the floor as Blake. So anyway, I think it'll keep on going for at least one more generation.
Awesome. Well, congratulations. We'll see you at SPAC. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Dead Pixel Society podcast. Read more great stories and sign up for the newsletter at www.thedeadpixelssociety.com.